Hi everyone and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where 3 Pro Tools experts demonstrate and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to the community in Avid's official Facebook support forum. Last week we talked about batch processing of clips on the timeline and in the clips list, but in this episode we're going to look at batch processing using the Audiosuite plugin. Very, very cool. And being clever as always are Anders Motz all the way over in Austria at Tonkraftwerk.
Hello, hello.
And Andy Hageman, who is Avid's training architect. Hi, Andy.
How you doing?
And myself, Dave. We're hoping that we're helping you understand and get the best out of the industry's favorite application. Okay, so batch processing via Audiosuite plugins. Anders and Andy. Do it.
Do it.
Do it now.
Audiosuite. What a great feature. I kind of like the concept of Audiosuite processing for a lot of tasks. Not all of them, of course, but it's really a great feature in Pro Tools, I think.
Yeah, it's the original process. It used to be back in the long ago that you couldn't change an effect's parameters in real time. That was science fiction. The only thing that you could do was process a clip destructively or non-destructively, but statically, which is where Audiosuite goes. And all the plugins that we use as AAX, they all exist as Audiosuite. Things like reverbs and delays and so on and so forth. But there are also a few things that don't exist and can't exist in real time. Things like reverse, normalize, reverse reverbs, reverse delays. There's a lot of different effects that are not part of our normal experience of time, and they have to be processed as files. They also are a way that you can get batch processing workflows to work in a way that's a little bit different than what we talked about last week.
Yeah, and of course, let's not forget that there are some plugins that are so CPU intensive that they're not even meant to be handled out in real time, even though you technically could. But if you're doing a lot of noise reduction or stuff like that, the way to go to do that is to use Audiosuite processing.
That's right. But today we're going to talk about batch processing with Audiosuite. And the reason why is that if you can get batch processing to work with Audiosuite, you've mastered Audiosuite. You can get it to do pretty much anything that you want it to do. So let me real quickly share a session that you saw last week. We've got a number of tracks and clips, all called audio because we want to show a worst case scenario. Now, just for demonstration purposes, and I don't usually work this way, I want to be able to have completely different clips selected on the timeline and in the clips list. That's not the way I usually work when I'm using Pro Tools. So I'm going to go into the setup menu, then to preferences, and then to the editing tab, and I'll disable the clip list selection follows edit selection, and the edit selection follows clip list selection preferences. This means that the clips that are selected in the timeline and in the clips list are completely unlinked. This kind of behavior will help me demonstrate something we'll talk about in just a bit. Questions?
No question, but this allows you, of course, to process clips in the clip list or on the timeline individually. That's where we're going, right?
Exactly right. So let's start off with just the most minimal kind of Audiosuite plugin that I know, and that's Normalize. It's also a very popular plugin for batch processing because, it's an easy way to set all your clips levels. I'm going to go into Audiosuite, go to Other, and Normalize.
So for instance, if you're working in game audio production, and every file that you're delivering into the game engine needs to have the same level, Normalize is your Audiosuite plugin for that.
It's very useful. It also happens to be a really simple plugin window and helps us to show this pretty well. So the first thing you're going to see over here, and this is probably not coming as a big surprise, in the upper left-hand corner is the plugin name, and you can change your Audiosuite plugin to something else without having to close the window and go back up into the menu. It's just one of my pet peeves. How many times do you see somebody go, oh, this isn't the right plugin? They close the window and they go up into the Audiosuite menu and they do the whole thing again. You don't have to do that. You can just go to Sans Amp and it just goes ahead and changes what you want it to change here without having to go or close any windows. It's just a quicker way to make that change. So for whatever it's worth, it's one of those things that can smooth your workflow just a little bit. But the real interesting button, and this is one that a lot of people, too many people, don't look at and don't understand. And that's the one to the immediate right of the plugin name. And it says playlist. And what does that mean?
Well, it will process the files that are selected in the playlist of this track currently.
That's right. When I set this up, I said we've got a number of tracks. We've got 8 or 9 clips that are selected on the timeline, which is the playlist. And I've got far more than that selected in the clips list. And I can choose which ones that I want to process. So if I go up to this button, you'll see that I've got 2 different options here. I can go with playlist or I can go with clips list. And when you're doing batch processing, what this means is I don't have to drag all my clips onto a track. I don't even have to create a track in order to do batch processing in Pro Tools. I can go ahead here and I'm going to click render, and you're going to see nothing has changed on the timeline, but it's created a whole bunch of new clips in the clips list. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Now I'm going to go back into Normalize, and I'll change my selector to process what's selected in the playlist, but I've been tricky, and I've sabotaged my result. Dave, what's going to happen when I click the render button? This is a trick question, and I want everyone to know that I've sprung an unfair question on you.
I'm going to say I'm not sure anything's going to happen because you haven't got using playlists selected. Is that where we're going?
Almost, right?
You're super close. Anders?
So what will happen? It will use the clips that you have in the playlist, and it will process them, and it will create the new processed file as a new clip list file, and it will not replace the clips that you have on the actual playlist because the use in playlist button is not engaged.
Now, this menu enables you to choose what clips will be processed, the ones in the playlist or the ones in the clips list. This is separate from the Use in Playlist button. When it's enabled, any processed clips that are currently in the playlist will be updated to the audio-suited clips. So, for example, if you were to normalize the clips on a track and the Use in Playlist button is blue, then you'd see the normalized clips in the track after you press the render button. If the Use in Playlist button is disabled, you'll simply create new clips in the clips list, but not change any of the clips in the timeline. So Dave, you were super close. In this case, if I hit render, you'll see no change in the track, but you will see new clips in the clips list. And if I undo what I just did, and this time I turn on the Use in Playlist setting, then when I click the render button, you'll see that new clips have been created in the clips list, and those new clips are shown on the track as well. This is a traditional way to use Audiosuite, but it's not the only way. If you're processing the clips in the clips list, the behavior is just a little bit different. You'll still see the Use in Playlist button, and it's still selectable, but that only applies to clips in the clips list that are also in a track's playlist. In the specific situation that I've created with my preferences, the clips selected in the clips list and in the playlist are completely different with no overlap, so the Use in Playlist button would have no real effect in this case.
You're absolutely right here. So if you happen to have selected a couple of clips in your clip list that are also in the playlist ones will be changed into the newly processed version if you have clip list and Use in Playlist enabled. But I also, Dave, I think that you meant the exact same thing that I said. You meant that you will not see a change in the playlist. I think that's what you meant, right?
That's exactly what I meant. Yeah.
The only other setting that bears looking at right now is this one here, which enables us to determine whether a new file will be created or not. You have the option of choosing overwrite files, which will destructively change the original file on your hard drive, so watch out. You could also choose create individual files, which will create one new file for every selected clip. And that goes for clips in the playlist or clips in the clips list, depending upon how you set up your Audiosuite plugin. Finally, you could choose to create continuous file, which is an option you'll only have when you're processing what's selected in your playlist. When you choose this, a single new file and clip will be created for all of your selected clips. Now, we could stop right here, and you now know how to batch process clips without having to drag everything onto the timeline, which is great. I want to end up, though, by showing another way of working when you want to use multiple processes. Now, there are a few ways to do this, but this is what I typically do. First, I'm going to go back into my preferences and re-enable the 2 preferences that link the selected clips in the playlist and in the clips list. I'll also change my timeline drop order to left to right, which you learned how to do in our previous episode. And finally, to set things up, I'll drag the clips that I want to process onto a track And I might use space clips to add a gap between them. Again, we talked all about this in last week's show. And I want to normalize. Dave, what level do you want us to normalize to?
Minus 0.3 dB.
And I'm going to add another one. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'll go to the 7-band EQ. Now, holding the Shift key is a really easy way to have multiple plugin windows open at the same time. And this works for AAX as well as Audiosuite plugins. And in the EQ window, I'll create a curve that I like to call Mount Fuji by the lake. And let's add one more. What'll it be, Anders?
I like phasers, right?
All right, so we're going to go with this guy. And just for fun, I'll set all the knobs on the left as counterclockwise as possible and all the knobs on the right fully clockwise. And I'll also make sure that each of these plugins are processing what's in the playlist for reasons that you'll see in just a second. Now, this is something that I want to be able to recall. And one of the things I'm going to use is a feature that you wouldn't think works with this, Windows configurations. Windows configurations? I never use Windows configurations. Well, you do now. I'm going to go to Window, Configurations, and I'm going to choose New Configuration. And I'm going to call this Fuji Phasers to Stun.
Phasers to stun on Mount Fuji.
Great. Fantastic. And you're going to see what I'm going to do in just a second. Probably some of you already do. And that is Windows configuration number 1. Boom. Okay. Now I'm going to say, Dave, give me a different setting for your normalize.
So minus 0.6 dB.
Minus 0.6 dB. Boom. Fantastic. I'm going to change this one.
Are you doing Tokyo Tower?
I'm going to do Tokyo Tower. And we'll just go ahead and change this phaser and just change the knobs. I'm going to save this as a different window configuration. Now, what window configurations do is they not only recall the windows and their locations, but when it comes to Audiosuite windows, it actually recalls the position of the parameters, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and just to be clear, they recall the position of knobs in Audiosuite windows, but not in a plugin window for a real-time effect.
That's right. AX, no, but Audiosuite, yes. Now, going back to the window menu and choosing new configurations, I don't want that. So here's a shortcut for you. And this is on the numeric keypad. Period, the number that you want to create, and plus. And that will create a new window configuration dialog box with the number that you clicked. So right now I hit period 2 plus. And so it's going to create a new window configuration. And I'm going to call this Tokyo Tower. That's all on the numeric keypad. Period, the number for the window configuration that you want to create, and then plus. And you have up to 99 window configurations, and I'll click OK. Fantastic. Now, if I go to my window menu to configurations, I can recall these two Windows configurations from here, or I can go to the window configuration list. And if I go to Fuji, now, if I wanted to do a certain kind of batch processing, I could go ahead and render these in any order that I want, right? So let's say I want to EQ the phase, and then I want to normalize. Now, last shortcut I'm going to show you. If you don't want to have to deal with this window configuration box, there's one more shortcut. Again, on the numeric keypad, period, the number that you want to recall, and the star. Period 2 star will recall window configuration number 2. Now, just a couple final thoughts. You'll see that not only are the positions of the windows recalled, the settings are recalled, but if we had changed the processing mode, that would have been recalled as well. So basically all the settings inside an Audiosuite window are stored in a window configuration, which is a fantastic way to do a different kind of workflow with batch processing. Now, this is only one way to do this kind of multi-stage batch processing. There are other ways you can do that if you're willing to process your original audio destructively by choosing that overwrite files setting. Now, reasonable minds can differ, but to me, anything that's done destructively carries with it a higher element of risk. So this is the way that I typically go for this kind of job. Once we're done with this, you might want to rename your process clips or export those clips as filed. This is similar to what we showed in last week's show, so if you missed that one, you might want to check it out.
So clever, especially the Windows configuration thing. We didn't even know that it retained the settings when you switch between the windows. That's so cool. And actually, because that shortcut is very similar to recalling memory location.
That's right.
And for me, using memory locations is really it's second nature. And we can program in the Windows configurations into a memory location.
That's right.
So if you can't remember the shortcut for Windows configurations, just program into a memory location.
Now,
have those always programmed in, and you can import them into new sessions, right?
I was just going to say, I can do you one better, but then you mentioned it. So window configurations is one of the features that you can actually import from other sessions. So if you set this up once, like the perfect signal flow with these 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 Audiosuite plugins in that succession that you want to have them with all of the settings, you can use import session data and import those window configurations into any other session. That's a great feature. That will save you a lot of time.
Or include it in a session template.
That's right. Yeah. Now, one thing that bears repeating is that the shortcuts to create a window configuration, to recall a window configuration, for that matter, to create or recall a memory location, rely on the numeric keypad. So the period on your QWERTY keypad, the numbers above your letters, those don't work. So you need either a numeric keypad, and if you're going to use Pro Tools in any kind of advanced way, I highly recommend it. The only other way you could probably do that is with SoundFlow or with a Stream Deck, something that can automate macros and things like that. But really, if you don't have a numeric keypad, consider it. There's a lot of really great things that you can't do without one.
And if you've got a control surface that with programmable soft keys, there may be some things that you could program in the soft keys.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. A little warning here, because for my laptop, which obviously doesn't have a numeric keypad, I've bought like a little Bluetooth numeric keypad, which is great for doing stuff like this. It's like you can recall and you can create shortcuts and window configuration stuff. But anything where you need a modifier and the numeric keypad won't work. And that has to do with the protocol it's using of some kind. It's like a Mac OS problem, not a problem with Pro Tools. I basically can't use modifier shortcuts on the numeric keypad, which is a bummer. So you need a full-size keyboard to use every feature. Right.
I feel that we've morphed from batch processing with plugins into Windows configuration workflow.
There you go.
Two-part episode. Very, very cool. Right, we'll leave that there then. Thank you very much, Andy. Terrific demonstration as always. If you got a lot out of this video, give it a thumbs up. Really helps us get videos out to new Pro Tools users who are looking for this kind of support. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That does exactly the same thing. It helps you and it helps us and it helps everybody else in the whole world at the same time. And if you head over to ProToolsAnswers.com, you can find out a little bit more about us over there. You can also join our inner circle over there as well. We're a community-funded channel, and there are a couple of benefits to joining our inner circle. You can read about those on the 2 tiers that we have available for you. All it leaves me to say is thank you very much to Anders.
Thank you, Dave.
And let's all bow down to Andy.
Oh, no.
And thank you from me, Dave. Thank you to you guys for watching. We will see you in the next episode. This is Pro Tools Answers. I'm Dave, that's Anders, and that's Andy. And we'll see you next time. And we're out.